The past week turned into a series of anomalous cataclysms that swept across the globe. From Africa and Asia to Europe and the Americas, the elements struck both regions accustomed to extreme conditions and areas where such events had previously been almost unheard of. All the details coming up in this report. USA. Starting on September 26th, the state of Arizona was hit by powerful storm fronts accompanied by abnormally intense downpours. The rain that struck most areas of Phoenix exceeded the monthly norm. At Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport, 41 millimeters of precipitation fell, a daily record not seen there in 7 years. In the mining town of Globe, the torrential rain triggered a sudden flood. Water rushed through the streets, sweeping away cars and uprooting trees. Residents were forced to take refuge on rooftops, waiting for help. During the flood, about 1,000 propane tanks from a distribution point were scattered throughout the streets of the historic downtown, creating a real explosion hazard. Rescuers declared a state of high alert and promptly brought in hazardous materials specialists. Fortunately, there were no explosions or fires. However, the disaster still claimed the lives of 3 people in Globe. They were swept away by floodwaters. Another man was carried away in a suburb of Phoenix. The destructive rainfall damaged roads and forced the closure of sections of Highway 60. The town of Miami was also affected by the disaster. It was flooded. Local residents compared the surging water to a sudden hurricane strike. The flow was rapid and visibility was almost zero. The flooding also reached tourist areas. Water quickly rose in Havasupai Canyon, submerging the famous waterfalls and trails, prompting the urgent evacuation of visitors. Thailand. Residents of Bangkok, the capital of Thailand, witnessed an emergency situation. On the morning of September 24th, a massive sinkhole suddenly formed on one of the city's roads, approximately 30 by 30 meters and about 50 meters deep. The collapse occurred in a critically dangerous location, near a city hospital and a police station. It swallowed 2 vehicles, damaged power line supports, and caused a rupture in the water supply system. Emergency crews urgently evacuated hospital patients and staff, residents of nearby houses, and police officers to protect them from possible new collapses. The hospital suspended outpatient services for at least 2 days, and electricity and water were cut off in the surrounding areas as a precautionary measure. The emergency zone was surveyed using drones. Monitoring showed continued ground movement around the sinkhole. The onset of rain increased soil instability. A second collapse was recorded, causing the police station building to begin sinking. Rescue services were forced to suspend operations. Throughout the day, the sinkhole expanded, sweeping away more and more structures. Fortunately, there were no human casualties, but significant damage was done to infrastructure and property. According to preliminary estimates, repair and restoration work will take at least 1 year. Experts are considering a water leak or subway construction as possible causes of the collapse, but the nature of this phenomenon remains unknown. Libya. On September 27th, in the western part of Libya, in the municipality of Zaltain, an unusual natural phenomenon for this region was recorded. A heavy hailstorm that affected several districts at once. According to local residents, the storm caught them by surprise. The hailstones were so large that they shattered the windows of cars and residential buildings, leaving behind considerable damage. Russia. Temperature anomalies continue to strike Siberia. At the end of September, summer heat settled in the southern part of the region. In Novosibirsk, the thermometer rose to 27 degrees Celsius, which is 10 degrees above normal. The unseasonal weather was accompanied by sharp temperature fluctuations. On September 29th in Irkutsk, the daytime temperature reached plus 21 degrees Celsius, while at night it dropped almost to zero, and snow fell. In the Urals, an abnormal snowfall was recorded. On the night of September 28th, a powerful cyclone hit the Chelyabinsk region. Within minutes, the snow made roads hazardous, and visibility significantly decreased. On the federal highway M5, traffic was complicated by snowdrifts. Snow removal equipment was deployed to clear the roads. In the Kartali district, numerous trees collapsed under the weight of wet snow, causing power outages. Snowfall was also observed in the Sverdlovsk region and in Bashkortostan. Italy. On September 27th, the city of Albaviglia was hit by a sudden downpour, strong winds, and hail. Within minutes, familiar roads turned into raging icy rivers. Residents were taken by surprise. This was the second such blow of nature to the region within a week, and according to eyewitnesses, it was even stronger than the previous one. On September 29th, after heavy rains in the city of Como, a large sinkhole formed on the roadway, swallowing a car. And this was not an isolated incident. Earlier, in the area of Lake Como, on a popular tourist route, a deep collapse appeared in the middle of the road. On screen, on September 22nd, a ground collapse occurred in the province of Como, Lombardy region. On the eve of the event, the area experienced record rainfall, the highest in the past 25 years, which washed out the soil beneath the roadway. According to forecasts, repairs on this section will take at least 2 months. Taiwan Island. On September 24th, a Taiwan Railways express train on the Taitung line collided with a rock that had fallen onto the tracks. As a result of the incident, the locomotive was damaged and 2 cars derailed. About 330 people, including passengers and crew, were on board the express. Fortunately, there were no injuries. Passengers were transported from the scene by special trains and buses. Train service was suspended on the damaged section, while ground transportation temporarily replaced rail service on the adjacent segment. The incident occurred due to heavy rainfall brought by Super Typhoon Ragasa, which triggered landslides and rockfalls in Taitung County. Ukraine. On September 30th, in the city of Odesa, the amount of rainfall that fell in just 7 hours nearly reached 2 months' worth. The stormwater drainage system could not cope. Streets, underpasses, parking lots, and shops were submerged. Dozens of private houses and basements of apartment buildings were flooded. Traffic lights were turned off. All electric transport stopped, and movement on key highways was paralyzed. Many districts experienced power outages. People waded through waist-deep water. Strong currents knocked them off their feet, and many cases of hypothermia were reported due to prolonged exposure to cold water. In one of the residential districts, a minibus with 60 passengers fell into a hole that had formed in the road. A passenger car also partially sank underground. Help arrived in time, and everyone was rescued. In total, more than 360 residents were saved in the city and surrounding areas, and hundreds of vehicles were evacuated. A red danger level was declared in Odesa, and school students were switched to remote learning. The disaster claimed 10 lives. Among the victims was a family of 5 with a child who lived in a basement-level apartment. According to neighbors, within just 15 minutes, the water rose by about 4 meters. They had no chance to escape. Several other people drowned after being caught in the powerful current. Mexico. Several states in Mexico were hit by severe weather. On September 26th, in the city of Culiacan, Sinaloa State, 54 millimeters of rainfall fell within just 1 hour. The rushing water proved fatal for a 9-year-old boy. He was swept away by the current. The heavy rainfall caused damage to hundreds of businesses, ruining equipment and products. In residential areas, several dozen houses were reported flooded. Torrential streams carried away more than 40 vehicles. A flooded kindergarten had to be evacuated. Rescuers safely let out all the children and staff. On September 27th, in Veracruz State, river overflows flooded residential houses and destroyed corn and lime crops. Hundreds of families were affected by the disaster and were cut off from the outside world. In the city of Cordoba, floodwaters submerged a Toyota car dealership. To assist the population in the affected region, the authorities mobilized the Army and the National Guard. Typhoon Bualoi. Tropical storm Bualoi struck the Philippines on September 26th. This new blow of nature hit the country just a few days after the deadly super typhoon Ragasa. This time, the central and southern regions of the Philippines were affected. Wind speeds reached up to 135 kilometers per hour, toppling trees and power lines, blocking roads and bridges. Torrential rains triggered floods and landslides. Nearly 9,000 homes were damaged, and 400,000 people were evacuated. Rural areas suffered heavily. Crops were destroyed, farms flooded. Residents of many communities were left without water, electricity, or access to stores and medical facilities. Hundreds of boats were destroyed or damaged by storm waves. The disaster claimed 27 lives. Most victims drowned or were struck by debris. Another 14 people were reported missing. After strengthening into a typhoon over the South China Sea, Bualoi made landfall in Vietnam on the night of September 28th. The typhoon brought gusts of up to 14 on the Beaufort scale, giant waves reaching up to 8 meters high, and heavy rainfall. According to meteorologists, in some places more than 500 millimeters of rain fell. In Sinkhole province, in several settlements, the water level rose almost to rooftops, leaving tens of thousands of families cut off from the outside world. At night, the generator at a pulmonary hospital failed, and all patients on mechanical ventilation were urgently transferred to another medical facility. The scale of damage is staggering. More than 144,000 houses in central Vietnam alone were damaged, and over 26,000 hectares of rice and other crops were destroyed by the storm. More than 6,000 power line poles were knocked down, leaving large parts of the region without electricity. 4 domestic airports suspended operations. Off the coast of Quang Tri Province, 2 fishing vessels sank. Search efforts for their crews were hampered by high waves and strong winds, which persisted even after the typhoon weakened. The education system also suffered severe losses. In 5 provinces, more than 1,000 educational institutions were affected. Buildings were flooded or destroyed. More than 53,000 people were forced to leave their homes because of the typhoon. The capital city, Hanoi, was also hit by floods and landslides. Locals said they had never experienced such a powerful storm. According to experts, Typhoon Bualoi exhibited rare and abnormal characteristics. Its movement speed over the South China Sea reached 35 kilometers per hour, almost twice the usual. And in Ha Tin province, it raged for more than 11 hours, setting a historical record for storm strength in the region. Moreover, the storm generated an unusually high number of tornadoes. 8 formed across different provinces. The province of Ninh Binh suffered the heaviest blow. A tornado claimed 9 lives and injured 18 people. More than 120 houses were damaged, some completely wiped out. The disaster claimed 29 lives in Vietnam, and 22 more people remain missing. Philippines. On the evening of September 30th, near the coastal city of Bogo, with a population of about 90,000 people, a powerful earthquake with a magnitude of 6.9 was recorded. It became one of the strongest in the last 10 years in the central region of the Philippines. The seismic event occurred at an extremely shallow depth, 5 kilometers, which led to significant destruction and human casualties. As of October 1st, the number of fatalities was 69, and dozens were injured. Thousands of people spent the night outdoors, fearing aftershocks. Within the first 10 hours after the earthquake, the Philippines seismic network recorded 722 aftershocks with magnitudes up to 4.8. In Cebu province, which was the hardest hit, a state of emergency was declared. In the municipality of Danbantayan, a 139-year-old church was completely destroyed. In the city of Bogo, closest to the earthquake epicenter, roads and bridges sustained significant damage, complicating rescue operations. During a basketball game in the city of San Remigio, part of the sports complex roof collapsed, causing human casualties. In the city of Cebu, the earthquake forced the suspension of a beauty pageant. The earthquake damaged power lines, leaving Cebu and neighboring islands without electricity. Water supply disruptions were also reported. The example of the Philippines clearly illustrates the cascade effect of disasters, when one natural strike is followed by another, often even more powerful, leaving people no time to recover. Those who still believe that climate disasters only affect the humid tropics, which many have labeled as zones of perpetual catastrophes, should pay attention to the USA, Russia, or Europe. Who could have imagined before that people in these territories would perish from ordinary rain? But the problem is that rain is no longer quite ordinary. It is now dangerous because water falls in enormous quantities in just minutes, rushing like a tsunami. Most people find it hard to imagine that a house can be underwater within minutes, making escape impossible. This is the danger. People do not realize the real threat and are unprepared for it. At such moments, you should not be in basements, underground parking lots and passages, tunnels, and you must not try to cross a raging stream. It can knock you off your feet. These simple rules can save your life in a critical moment. Therefore, we emphasize again and again, right now, while you are not yet sitting on the roof of your flooded house waiting for help, it is important to study what is happening in the world with the climate and what has changed in the weather phenomena familiar to us. Your preparedness will help not only you, but also your loved ones, neighbors, and everyone nearby during a natural disaster.